In the village of Umyaba, people judged a woman's value by the cry of a baby in her house and how many naming ceremonies she hosted. But for Amaoge, her house was completely silent. She only faced the shame and the hurtful gossip of women who could easily have children. That afternoon, Amaoge sat on a low wooden stool behind her kitchen hut, peeling cassava with her mind far away. Suddenly, from the front of the yard, the sharp, loud voice of her mother-in-law, Mama Uzoamako, cut through the air. It was as unpleasant as the smell of burnt food. "Nwabwiz, my son!" Mama Uzoamako shouted, making the thatched roof shake. "How long will you keep wasting your time on a dead plant? The rainy season has come and gone 10 times since you married this woman, but her belly is still as flat as the market ground. Are you under a spell?" Amaoge's hand shook, and her knife slipped, cutting deep into her thumb. She watched the thick red blood rush out, but she didn't even feel the pain. The heartbreak she was feeling inside was far worse than any physical injury. Her husband, Nwabwiz, was a good man. He was as strong as a giant tree and had endless patience. "Mama, please," he said, sounding very tired. "Children come from God. It is God who gives them. God does not give children to women who have ruined their own chances in the spirit world." Mama Uzoamako snapped back. "If you don't marry a second wife by the next new moon, I will find one and bring her to you myself. I refuse to die without holding a grandchild." That night, the heavy threat hung over the house like a thick, suffocating smoke. Amaoge lay awake in the dark, listening to Nwabwi's breathing beside her. She knew he loved her, but even the most patient man has a limit. In Umyaba, if a man dies without a child to carry his name, his family line is wiped out forever. Fear and desperation can slowly drive a person crazy until it completely takes over. The next morning, Amaoge woke up with a plan born out of pure terror. She didn't pack her bags, and she didn't run away to her aunt's village. Instead, she took some old clothes and soft cotton, and she began to pad her stomach. At first, it was just a little bump, just enough to make a neighbor look twice. When Nwabwiz came back from the farm that evening, Amaoge sat on the mat, pretending to feel sick. She spat into a bowl and looked up at him with tears in her eyes. "Nwabwiz," she whispered, I think the gods have finally answered us." Nwabwiz's eyes went wide, and he dropped his cutlass on the floor. "Amaoge, are you serious?" "I am sure," she lied. Her heart was beating so fast and hard against her chest, she thought it would burst right open. "But listen, my husband, I had a dream. A spirit warned me that for this pregnancy to be safe, no man must touch me. We have to sleep separately until the baby arrives." It was a massive lie, but Nwabwiz was so blinded by happiness that he agreed immediately. He was ready to sleep on the floor, or even outside, just to keep the baby safe. Soon, the news spread through Umyaba like wildfire. Mama Uzoamako danced so hard her knees cracked. She rubbed white powder on her skin to celebrate and treated Amaoge like a fragile egg. But for Amaoge, the next 9 months became a prison she built for herself. Every month, she stuffed more cloth into her stomach. She changed the way she walked, swaying and holding her back as if she was carrying a heavy load. She groaned every morning. She demanded spicy peppers and local clay to eat. She played the role perfectly, but inside, she was dying. She knew time was running out. The 9th month was coming, and there was no baby inside her, only bundles of cloth and lies. When the 9th month finally arrived, the whole compound was filled with tense expectation. Mama Uzoamako was already buying baby soap and preparing hot water and spices for after the birth. "Amaoge," Mama Uzoamako asked one morning, looking closely at her daughter-in-law's huge, cloth-filled belly. "When is this baby coming? You have been heavy for too long." "Soon, Mama," Amaoge replied, as cold sweat broke out on her forehead. "The baby is just being stubborn." But deep down, she knew she had run out of time. A toad does not run in the daytime for no reason. Amaoge knew she had to do something quickly, or her final disgrace would be worse than death. Early the next morning, while the dew was still wet on the grass, Amaoge tied her head tie. She picked up a machete and a long rope, telling Nwabwiz she was going to gather firewood near the edge of the farmland. "Let me go for you," Nwabwiz insisted. "You are heavily pregnant." "No, my husband," she smiled, but it was a tight, fragile smile. "The midwife said I need to walk to help the baby come down easily. I won't go far." She walked past the farms. She walked past the stream. She kept walking until the path completely disappeared, and the scary, giant trees of the Ayegbra, the forbidden forest, stood right in front of her. Normal people never came here. It was a dumping ground. It was where the village threw the things they feared, people who died of strange diseases, and in the old days, babies that were seen as bad luck, like twins or babies born with teeth. Amaoge didn't care about things being cursed or forbidden. She didn't even care if the child she found had 2 heads. She just needed a baby. She had to save her marriage. The forest was completely silent. Not a single bird was singing. Even though the morning sun was out, the air felt freezing cold. Amaoge walked until her legs began to shake, pushing through sharp thorns that ripped her skin. She was looking for the shrine of the forgotten, where people said the goddess Ogugu Miri lived. Finally, she saw it in an open space. The shrine was a small, scary hut made of mud and palm leaves, with white chalk marks drawn all around it. And right there, sitting at the bottom of the shrine, was a woven basket. Amaoge gasped. She rushed forward, dropping her machete on the ground. Inside the basket, there was a baby. It was a baby girl. The child was wide awake, staring up at the leaves above her. Her eyes were way too bright and looked far too smart for a baby. Her skin looked as smooth and beautiful as polished wood. She was absolutely stunning. But there was something strangely quiet about her. She didn't cry at all. Instead, she just looked at Amaoge and made a sweet, quiet sound. Amaoge didn't stop to ask who the child belonged to. She didn't ask why a baby was left at a shrine for spirits. Was it a gift? A trap? An outcast? A cursed child? It didn't matter to her at all. "My personal god has saved me," Amaoge whispered. Her hands shook as she untied the cloth padding from her own stomach and threw it into the bushes. Then, she picked up the baby. The child felt strangely light, but she was warm against Amaoge's skin. Amaoge quickly rubbed dirt all over her own face, messed up her hair, and crushed a snail to rub its fluid on the baby so it would look like a fresh birth. Then, she started screaming at the top of her lungs. "Help! Help! My baby!" She ran back toward the village path, holding the child tightly. By the time she reached the edge of the farms, women were already running toward her. Nwabwiz was leading them, and his face was completely pale with fear. They found Amaoge sitting by the side of the road, totally exhausted, holding the baby wrapped up in her head tie. "Amaoge!" Nwabwiz cried out, dropping to his knees. "What happened?" "I went to get firewood," Amaoge panted, her mouth tasting dry and bitter like ash. "The birth pain hit me like a flash of lightning. I couldn't move. I thought I was going to die out there." "And who helped you deliver the baby?" Mama Uzoamako asked, looking closely at how neatly the umbilical cord was cut. "An old woman," Amaoge lied quickly. "She just appeared out of nowhere. She had white hair like wool and walked with a walking stick. She helped me push and cut the cord. When I looked up to thank her, she was gone." The villagers gasped in surprise. "It was an ancestor." One woman shouted. "A spirit helper. It's a miracle." Mama Uzoamako screamed, dancing all around them. "My enemies have been shamed. My son finally has a child." Nwabwiz held the baby as if she were made of fragile glass, with tears pouring down his face. "We will name her Oleido," he whispered. "The good mother. Because she has wiped away my tears." Amaoge smiled, but inside, her heart was freezing cold. She had stolen a child from the gods, and she knew that anything stolen never brings true peace. 7 years passed. Oleido grew up to be an incredibly beautiful girl. She was tall for her age, and her hair was as thick and black as the night sky, but there were things about her that made the villagers feel uneasy. When Oleito walked, she didn't leave any footprints in the dust. When she sat under the Yadara tree, fruits would just fall to the ground, even when there was no wind at all. And the most frightening thing was her laugh. It sounded like water flowing smoothly over stones, beautiful, but totally cold. Amaoge loved her daughter with a fierce, deep passion. She braided her hair, bought her the best beads, and kept her safe from the hot sun. But Amaoge lived in constant fear. She noticed that Oleito never slept deeply. At night, the girl would sit up in bed, stare at the corner of the room, and whisper in a language that Amaoge couldn't understand. "Who are you talking to, my daughter?" Amaoge would ask, her voice trembling. Oleito would turn those bright, ancient-looking eyes toward her mother and smile. "My playmates, Mama. They say it's time for me to come home. They say the lender wants his debt back." Amaoge's blood turned to ice. "Tell them you are already home. You are right here with me." The bad luck started during the dry season of the 7th year. It began with the farm animals. One by one, Nwabwi's goats started dying. They would be found stiff and cold in the morning, without a single mark on them. Then, the crops on their farm dried up and died, while their neighbors' farms grew perfectly. Mama Uzoamako, who was always watching like a hawk, began to spy on Oleito closely. One afternoon, Amaoge came back from the market and found Mama Uzoamako screaming at the entrance of the house. "I said it. I said there is something wrong with this child." The old woman yelled, pointing a crooked finger at Oleito, who was just standing calmly in the middle of the yard. "Mama, what is it?" Amaoge dropped her market basket and rushed to block her daughter. She was talking to a python. Mama Uzoamako screamed. A giant royal python. It was wrapped around her leg, and she was petting it like a dog. When I shouted, the snake disappeared into the ground. In Umyaba, the royal python was sacred. It was seen as a messenger of the water goddess. For a child to control it was completely unheard of. "It was just a lizard, Mama," Amaoge lied, holding Oleito tightly. "Your eyes are getting bad." "My eyes see perfectly fine." Mama Uzoamako spat back. "This child is not from this world. She is a spirit child, an Ogbanj, or something even worse. We must call the native doctor." Nwabwi's, who usually liked to keep the peace, looked very worried. He had seen strange things too. He had noticed how the rain seemed to completely miss Oleito whenever she walked outside. He loved his daughter, but fear was starting to take over his mind. "Amaoge," Nwabwi said that night in a low voice. "We have to look for answers. The bad luck hitting my house is just too much." "No." Amaoge snapped, panic rising in her throat. "She is just a child. Leave her alone." But the choice wasn't hers to make. The elders called for Dibia Amadi, a powerful spiritual healer known for having eyes that could see hidden truths. The day Dibia Amadi arrived, the sky turned a dark, bruised purple. A heavy wind blew through the yard, ripping the leaves off the palm trees. The native doctor was a small man, wearing leopard skin and carrying a walking stick topped with red feathers. He stepped into the yard and stopped dead in his tracks. He didn't even look at Nwabwi's, that he didn't even look at Mama Uzoamako. His eyes were locked right onto Oleito, who was sitting on a mat, playing with stones. The native doctor started shaking. He took a step back, and you could see pure terror on his face. "This is a curse," he whispered. "What do you mean, wise one?" Nwabwi's asked, stepping forward. "You have a thief in your house," the native doctor shouted, his voice booming like thunder. He turned sharply to Amaoge. "Woman, where did you get this child?" The whole yard went dead silent. You could literally hear a pin drop. Amaoge felt her knees go weak. I gave birth to her," she stammered, holding on to the lie she had told 7 years ago. "In the forest. The old woman helped me. Liar, the native doctor roared, slamming his walking stick onto the ground. There was no old woman. There was only the shrine. This child belongs to the goddess Ogugamiri. She is a dedicated child, a sacrificial lamb left at the shrine to fix the sins of the past generation. She was never meant to live with humans. You stole from the gods. The truth hit Nwabwi's like a physical punch. He staggered backward, looking back and forth from the native doctor to his wife. Amaoge, what is he talking about? You told me, you said an old woman helped you. Amaoge collapsed into the dirt, crying bitterly. Her lie had finally crashed down. I just wanted a baby, Nwabwi's. I wanted to give you a child. My womb was dead. I patted my stomach. I lied to everyone. I went into the forbidden forest and I found her there. I just wanted to be a mother. You broke a sacred spiritual agreement, the native doctor snapped back, his voice shaking the ground. Because you stole what belongs to the spirits, the spirit has come to take it back. The death of your goats was a warning. The death of your crops was a warning. Now, the goddess demands a life for a life. Whose life? Mama Uzoamako asked, her voice trembling with fear. The native doctor pointed his walking stick straight at Nwabwi's. The master of the house. Unless this child is returned to that shrine by midnight tomorrow, your husband will die. A loud scream tore out of Amaoge's throat. She looked at Nwabwi's, who stood completely frozen, his face pale with shock. Then she looked at Oleito. The little girl wasn't playing anymore. She stood up, and her 7-year-old face looked filled with an ancient, deep sadness. She walked over to Amaoge and wiped the tears from her mother's face. Don't cry, Mama, Oleito said softly. I told you the lender was asking for his debt back. The night that followed was the longest night of Amaoge's life. Nwabwi's became terribly sick the moment the native doctor left. He was burning up with a fever that no amount of water could cool down. He tossed and turned in bed, calling out the names of ancestors who had been dead for ages. Amaoge sat right by his bedside, holding his burning hot hand. In the other room, Oleito slept, or at least, she seemed to be sleeping. Amaoge. Nwabwi's croaked, his eyes barely open. Take her back. I can't. Amaoge sobbed. She is my daughter. I breastfed her. I raised her. She is real to me, Nwabwi's. She isn't just a spirit. She is my child. And I am your husband, Nwabwi's whispered. Are you going to trade my life for a stolen dream? The question hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. Amaoge left the room and walked over to where Oleito was lying. The child opened her eyes. Mama? Oleito said. Papa is in so much pain. I know. Amaoge wept. If I keep you here, he dies. If I take you back, you die. Oleito sat up in bed. But I love you, Mama. You were the only person who actually wanted me. The people who left me at the shrine didn't want me at all. But you wanted me. Hearing this completely broke Amaoge's heart. She grabbed the little girl and held her tight, rocking back and forth. This was the tragic part of her sin. Out of her own selfishness, she had created a real bond of love, and now that love was demanding a sacrifice of blood. The next evening, as the sun began to go down, painting the sky a deep, bloody orange, Amaoge made her choice. She bathed Oleito and dressed her in a clean white cloth. She didn't say a single word. Her heart felt like a heavy stone inside her chest. She carried Oleito on her back, just like she used to do when she was a baby. She walked out of the yard, right past Mama Uzoamako who was crying bitterly, and past her husband's sickbed. She walked straight toward the forbidden forest. The journey was incredibly hard. The tree roots seemed to trip her ankles on purpose, and the wind howled around her, sounding like it was calling her name, Amaoge. Thief. Amaoge. Thief. When she finally reached the Ayagbara shrine, the air felt incredibly heavy. It smelled like rain and wet dirt. The basket wasn't there anymore, but you could clearly feel the terrifying presence of the goddess. Amaoge dropped to her knees and put Oleito down. "Great Oguga Miri," she cried out, her voice cracking. "I have brought back what belongs to you. I am the thief. Please punish me, but save my husband." Only silence answered her. Oleito stood right in front of the shrine. She turned around to look at Amaoge one last time, and tears filled the little girl's eyes. They were real human tears, not spirit tears. "Goodbye, Mama," she said. "Thank you for being my mother." "Oleito, no." Amaoge lunged forward to hug her one last time, but a sudden, violent blast of freezing wind threw her backward. A thick mist started swirling all around the child. The trees seemed to bend down toward her. From the dark shadows of the shrine, a massive python crawled out and wrapped itself around the girl. Oleito didn't run away. She just gently placed her hand on the snake's head. Then, the mist got so thick that it completely swallowed both the girl and the snake. "Oleito!" Amaoge screamed, scratching at the dirt with her fingernails. "Oleito!" But when the mist finally cleared, the girl was completely gone. Only a single white cowrie shell was left on the ground where she had been standing. Amaoge collapsed, crying and screaming until her voice completely vanished. She lay there in the dirt for hours until the moon was high in the sky. When she finally dragged herself back to Umyaba, the house was completely quiet. Her heart stopped. Was she too late? She rushed frantically into the hut. Nwabwiz was sitting up in bed, drinking some water. His fever was finally gone. He felt really weak, but he was alive. "Amaoge?" Nwabwiz asked, looking at her messy hair and the mud staining her wrapper. "Where is she?" Amaoge couldn't even answer. She just sank to the floor and started crying. Eventually, life in Umyaz went back to normal. But Amaoge was never the same again. Nwabwiz made a full recovery. Surprisingly, the love between him and Amaoge grew even stronger, held together by the terrible tragedy they had survived. They never breathed a word about Ezine to anyone outside the family. Mama Uzoamako changed too. Nearly losing her son and witnessing those supernatural events completely humbled her. She stopped mocking Amaoge, became quiet, and started treating her with a strange, fearful respect. She completely stopped nagging them about a grandchild, terrified of what Amaoge might bring home next. 3 years later, the impossible happened. Amaoge missed her period. Soon, she started getting morning sickness. This time, it was the real deal. When the midwife confirmed the pregnancy, the whole village was shocked. At an age when most women were getting ready for menopause, Amaoge was pregnant. 9 months later, she gave birth to a baby girl. The baby was absolutely beautiful, with skin the rich color of polished camwood. Amaoge's hands shook as she held her, carefully checking her fingers and toes. "What should we name her?" Nwabwiz asked, staring at the baby in complete wonder. Amaoge looked into the baby's eyes. They were bright and looked like they knew things. As the baby stared back at her, Amaoge saw a flash of recognition, a memory of a forest, a shrine, and a sacrifice. The baby curled her tiny hand around Amaoge's finger, holding on tight. Amaoge smiled, tears pouring down her face. The gods could be terrifying, yes. But sometimes, they showed mercy to those who had learned their lesson. "We will call her Oluchi," Amaoge whispered. "The one God has given." The moment she said the name, the wind outside rustled the palm trees. And just for a second, the happy, carefree laughter of a 7-year-old girl echoed through the compound.